Good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365, with your daily update for Thursday, September 23rd. We have a very special interview today. We've got Angelica Euseary coming on the show, along with Stephanie Díaz de León, who is the co-host of the It's Only 10 Minutes podcast here on Madison365. That she and I host that together every morning. So if you listen to that podcast, and you know her voice, you'll get to see her today talking with Angelica about this really important issue, which is well, that was weird. I don't know what happened to my camera just now, but everything's good now, it seems like. Anyway, we have a story on the site this today that Angelica Euseary did for us, along with Center for Public Integrity and Wisconsin Watch. It was a very collaborative project on the disparities in law enforcement referrals of students at schools. Wisconsin, as it turns out, is one of the worst states in the United States in terms of the not only referring kids to school to police, but the disparities in referrals to police. Black and Indigenous kids are 3 times more likely to be sent to police than white kids for, often for very simple disciplinary issues. So we had that conversation. It's kind of a long conversation, so I'm going to get through the COVID numbers quickly, and then we'll get to that conversation, which we recorded last night. So unfortunately, you won't be able to ask live questions during that portion. But if you have any questions during that, I'll be back at the end. You can drop them in the comments. If you have any questions or comments about the issue, you can drop them in the comments, and I can address them afterwards. So that will be coming up in just a minute. But first, let's hit the COVID numbers, which today aren't. I mean, they're not good, but they're not terrible either. The 7-day positive test rate actually has come down to 7.5, which is great. Although, I don't really trust that, because yesterday they said it was 7.7, and now they're saying yesterday was 8.2. So the 7.5 today is all the tests that have been reported in the past 7 days, 7.5% have been positive. The problem with that is they're going to reattribute some of those results to different days when they actually took place. So that might be revised upward. That's been what's happening the past few weeks. They'll show us a number like 7.5, 7.1, 7.7, and then you look later, and that same day is now 8.1 or 8.6 or whatever. So in any case, 7.5 is still too high, even if that is a real number. That's still too high. It's got to be below 3. But in terms of number of cases, we're over 3,000 again today. 3,075 puts our daily average, actually comes down a little bit to 2,807, which is good news. I guess that's coming down. We did have, we saw 3,600 on Tuesday. We saw fewer than 3,000 yesterday, just a little bit over 3,000 today. So, kind of leveling off maybe a little bit in terms of cases and of 7-day average. Now, the 7-day average of deaths is predictably rising and will continue to rise even as the number of cases comes down. The number of deaths will continue to rise for some period because it's a lagging indicator, right? Deaths go up or down about 4 to 6 weeks after the cases start to go up or down. We report 18 new confirmed deaths yesterday. That puts our daily average of deaths at 13. Now, I do not yet have, because I'm coming to you early today because it's Thursday, and that's the way my schedule is right now. We do not have the hospitalization data yet. That is posted by the Wisconsin Hospital Association at 3:30 every day, so we don't have that yet. But one other thing we may have is a variant report. Those come out on Thursdays. It's always kind of dicey as to whether we're going to have it yet at this point. It looks like we do not yet have an updated variant report for today. That'll probably be up later this afternoon. I can tell you that the last week that they're reporting, 94.9% of all cases sequenced were Delta variant, and 5% were other. I don't know what other means. We talked a little bit earlier about mu variant. There was some concern about the mu variant. there was all sorts of people saying it's resistant to vaccines and stuff like that, and it's going to come to the United States. We haven't seen that take hold yet. It is one of the dominant strains in Colombia and other spots in South America. We've seen a handful of cases going back 5 or 6 weeks. We're seeing 7, 8, 9 cases, 2 cases each week. There are the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, 0 new variant cases in Wisconsin. That doesn't mean there are none. It's just among the cases that have been sequenced, we haven't seen any, which means it's probably not particularly prevalent in the population because these are randomly sampled cases that are then genomically sequenced. And if there's any mu variant in the wild, they're going to see it a couple times in these samples. It just has not become an issue in Wisconsin at this moment. Doesn't mean it won't, but just if you've been worried about mu variant, it hasn't taken over at this moment. Okay, that's basically the COVID update. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephanie and Angelica, and I was in the conversation as well, and I'll be back at the other side of this. If you have any questions about or comments or thoughts about the issues of police and schools, about law enforcement referrals of students, of children, feel free to weigh in the comments, and I can address those afterwards. But so I'm just going to go ahead and start this, and we'll see you on the other side.
Today we have a really special interview, right, Rob?
Yes, we do. Our reporter Angelica Euseary joins the program today to talk about this big reporting project that we just published today. This is a localization of the criminalizing kids story. Angelica, how you doing? Thanks for being with us today.
I'm lovely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And I'm going to be transparent and say I'm going to fangirl a little bit. This is the first time I get to meet you, and I'm very excited to meet you because you have been doing some really great work with Madison365. I appreciate the hard work that you're doing in the middle of being in school as well. So, and this project is a rather large project that you took on with regards to the story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been working on this?
About a month.
Yeah.
A little bit over a month. Very long time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you realized it was going to be that when we first talked about it.
I asked Rob, I'm like, did you warn her that this is going to be wild?
Well, I think it got bigger than we thought it was going to be. We could talk about why it took a little bit longer, but the Center for Public Integrity, folks might remember yesterday we published their sort of national scope story. They're a national level nonprofit news organization that sort of mined this data, and then when I pitched this in a staff meeting, it's like, anybody want to help try to localize this, take this Wisconsin data, kind of dig into it, and talk about implications of the law enforcement referrals of students and the racial disparities in those referrals. And Angelica put her hand up and said, let's do it. Let's try it. So I was really grateful for that. And it turned out it's a difficult story. It's not a good story. It's not a nice story, but it's this reporting is, I think, really good and really important.
It's really impactful, right? So what it's looking at and trying to get at is the challenges of having cops in schools and what those implications are with regards to Black and brown children throughout the state of Wisconsin is what you did here, really. Mm-hmm. Because it's so easy to look at a national story and not localize it and make it seem like it doesn't impact me. It doesn't happen in my school district. The cops are great. And you help put that into context, right? I mean, absolutely. There are ways that we dismiss the impact of certain systems in our children's lives, and especially when the children do not look like our children. But for some of us, it can have some serious, long-lasting implications in how children learn, how children, even get to stay in school, and what sort of access and pipelines that they fall into with regards to other systems, including prison systems, right, Rob?
Yeah. This is, I think when you talked with Savian Castro from the Madison School Board, he talked about the school to prison pipeline, right? So, well, first of all, let's hit some of these numbers. Do you, Angelica, what are the kind of the highlights of the data from what you, from your perspective?
All of it. I guess when I think of Wisconsin, I'm from Michigan, but you don't think about like students who are experiencing this level of violence in schools. Like literally being taken from schools and put in the hands of police officers. Black kids, Latino kids, Indigenous students, like students with disabilities, especially. And Savian talked about that a lot too, being misunderstood when it comes time to be disciplined by adults, and they just don't try to like understand or like see where you're coming from and just send you to an SRO. And he was saying like he's had incidents with SROs too, and he's seen other kids, and it's just like it's embarrassing. It's weird to see like your classmate just get put out of class, and knowing the type of trouble they were getting into. And some of the data was talking about how some students receive like criminal charges from this stuff, and they didn't find out until their parents got like a letter in the mail saying like your child has been like sanctioned here, like come to court. And it's just like there are other ways to healthier ways to discipline children besides getting the police involved. That's just like, why are you as an adult calling the police on a child?
Yes.
And you're calling the police on Indigenous children 3 times as often as white children.
Yeah.
You're calling police on Black students 3 times as often as white children. It's just there's nothing colorblind or fair about this, right?
No, there's nothing at all. And it, the statistics were a bit staggering to read. The national level, just to give everyone a sense, is 4.5 per 1,000 students referred to the police, right? National level. Wisconsin's overall level was 9, which is double the national level. Milwaukee's level was 7.2 per 1,000. And Madison's, though lower, but everyone is like, we're so liberal and so much more understanding, was 6.2 per 1,000, which is just an incredible number to me for the stage and for those localized communities.
The incident I started the article with, the Black boy who had mental health issues and left, wasn't an incident and left, and the police went to his house and like beat him up. It's crazy. I just realized, Wisconsin is not as safe. Madison is not as safe. Like, I don't want to jump around anymore. Like, it's not what it appears. And Wisconsin was in the highest numbers in every chart. It's just like, damn, like we got it. Something has to change. Like something has to give.
Absolutely. Like, right. And so, I'm going to personalize this a little bit because I know Rob wants everyone to remain neutral, of course, understandably. But when you saw those numbers, I like how Rob shook his head like, well, no. But, on some level, when you saw those numbers, right, like how staggering was that to see, like, we don't want to be at the top in these areas. And yet you consistently saw, like, among Black children, among Latino children, among Indigenous children, among children with disabilities. How exhausting is that to see that, throughout your time trying to look at this stuff?
Yeah. And I'm a student at UW too. So feeling that the level of isolation where in one class, I was the only Black woman out of 50, and being harmed in that way, just, I felt that, and there was an incident a few years ago where a teacher who was a UW alum from the School of Ed ripped a little Black girl's braid out of her head, trying to discipline her.
Yep.
And it just hit me. Like, I feel for the Black, brown, misunderstood students with disabilities who are in Madison and who live in Wisconsin, because their rates of being disciplined and sent to police officers or, that type of stuff, it's twice as much as like the numbers they take up in the school.
Yeah.
Like they're referred twice as high as everyone else. And it
makes you angry, it disheartens you, it makes you realize like how problematic this is, because it also has lasting effects on the families and the children, right? Not just, and the students who are their classmates, right? It's traumatic, one, for those who see, a friend of theirs get pulled away, and because whether we want to acknowledge it, as nice as the police are, it feels violent. Like no matter your age, no matter what it is, it feels violent. Sorry, my child is in the background. It feels very violent to them and such. You want to wave?
Hi, Daddy.
Say hi to Angelica.
Hi.
Hi.
I mean, we're gonna make it part of the show. It's great. And I like how she's just like, whatever. We know mommy's talking, and she's gonna use the word violent when she talks because she's talking about Wisconsin. It feels very violent for the children who are watching it and the child that is experiencing it, right? And in a way that removes them and otherizes them even further.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than thinking of ways in which we approach a child, because they're children, approach a child with other mechanisms to make them feel of value and of worth, we remove them completely, make them feel othered, make them feel this violent kind of retching away from what they know and experience every day into this kind of, solo hard experience. And then there's also the monetary expensive that comes with it too,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the other thing that that is also important to acknowledge, that there is usually fines and expenses for these families to kind of help their children if they can afford to do so. So it's just this kind of pattern of and cycle of just harm for everybody involved.
Doing this article, just for the first time, it was like a reality check. Like, oh shit, like you don't feel safe going to school in Wisconsin either.
And your children, you're like, you're 10, you're 13, you're supposed to enjoy this part, right? Even if you have a bad day and maybe you acted up a little bit, is the answer to send you an SRO, right? Is that really going to lead this to a positive outcome for all of us, for the school, for your culture, your systems that you were trying to work within and such? Can you talk a little bit about, because I know you all try to reach out to various schools about their statistics, about their numbers, and what you heard back from them? It got really silent because it was really silent. I set that up on purpose. I was being a brat. But it got really silent, right? You didn't hear back from a lot of people.
That was shocking because the numbers were so high. It's coming from over half the schools in the state, like this issue. And I just thought that people would be more open to talk about it, because that's the first step, is like admitting that this is an issue. And like, it was frustrating. I'm like, I hate being ignored as a reporter. I will openly complain about that, but this issue, it got really personal, and I like wanted to help these kids through writing this, and like through like officials saying like, oh, this is an issue, like we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And the silence was violent in its own. Like, they saying nothing is saying something. So you want to be complicit? Okay.
Good to know. Good to know what district I'm not taking my kids to. But no, absolutely. The silence is violence too. And I think it's a really important distinction. Rob, you did hear from one school though, right?
I heard back from I was, just for scheduling reasons, I was helping pitch in on the story too. And we also, I should say, we collaborated a bit with Wisconsin Watch, who helped us with some of the data. But also I heard back from Stoughton, which was one of the highest in terms of disparities among Black children, especially. And they did, provide a, it's sort of an anodyne statement, but
they
acknowledging that it's an issue and that they are working on it. And so, that's better than nothing. It's more than what we got from Verona, Middleton, from Milwaukee, from Appleton, Green Bay, all the largest school districts, and some of those that were among the highest. I did get one email back saying we're not going to comment, and everybody else just ignored us. So, but you also spoke, Angelica, with Sabian Castro from the school board of Madison School Board, and we should note that Madison actually voted to remove SROs from the schools. So this is the beginning of the first school year with no police in the schools in Madison. You also talked with our old friend Ajma Butler over in Milwaukee, who actually went to high school in Madison when there were SROs here. So you want to talk a little bit about what those guys had to say from that sort of advocacy perspective about this issue and what can be done about it?
Yeah, Ajmu, that was a pleasure talking to him. He's
You love him. Like, I love Audrimo. There is truth and perspective and real work that he's been doing for years in his community, right? And you feel that, and you feel the passion he has for children, right? But I mean, I'm sorry, I cut you off a little bit there.
No, you're okay. He just, I think all the interviews had a level of like heaviness to them, but his the most because he went to school in Milwaukee and in Madison. And he said, one, he didn't see police in his schools until he moved to Madison. And then outside of the schools, there would be police officers there. So like policing children as they're like going into schools and as they're coming out of schools and what that means. But then like also thinking about what the solution is, like where do we go from here? Because the violence is it's insane first. And then when the police do arrive, they aren't able to stop anything. They aren't able to actually help or like de-escalate situations. They just escalate it and like make the violence even worse.
Yeah, they sometimes stress kids out even more, that they react even more, right?
Yeah. It was a lot. And then talking to Sabian too, with him being a Black man with a disability, it just, in the numbers, you just see like students with disabilities honestly got disciplined the worst. And it's frustrating because there are resources that can help these adults better understand students with disabilities and with mental health issues. And they just choose not to. They just choose to put them in the hands of police officers. Mm-hmm. And that does even more harm because the police are definitely not trained to handle these children. And then their families are affected, like you were saying, like that's what Ajamu brought up too, like where they come from, like the ghettos of Milwaukee, like struggle, like from impoverished neighborhoods. So like putting them in the hands of police officers in school, like they already are like dodging police in their neighborhoods. So it just, this whole story just showed me that schools in Wisconsin are not safe for all kids. And I know like we talk about that a lot, like it's in the news or whatever, but it's real life. People are really affected by this. Mm-hmm. And I hate the fact that I know some people are scared to go to school. And they shouldn't be. Like that should be, you spend most of your time there as a student anyway. Yeah. So like
your childhood is in school, right? And we've put our most vulnerable in that space, and now we've made them even more vulnerable for their future. And when we have them encounter and go to the police for whatever reason, because we haven't taught the adults or given the adults the right tools and resources to really help these kids. So it's a much larger conversation.
You know what's the irony here too is that people who are in favor of having police in schools say the same thing. Say that it's for safety,
but it's not for the children's safety, obviously.
Not for the Black and brown children's safety.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or those children with disabilities, right? They're incredibly vulnerable. All these children are incredibly vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Sometimes school is where they get their meals, right? Sometimes school is where some children get heat and air conditioning and just an ability to get time with somebody else, right? Because parents are busy. There are so many things, so many factors, and yet we put them in a vulnerable position when we allow discipline to be outsourced to somebody who doesn't know them. They become another thing for somebody else to deal with, and we push them out, and that trauma will exist for them for the rest of their lives and impact their future decisions, right? So there's just so much more to it.
You also talked with Kristen Devitt at the Wisconsin Department of Justice, right? And she had some things to say about when you say about police don't know kids. What they'll say is the SROs are supposed to develop a relationship with the kids and all that. But is that real? Does that really happen? And Angelica, what did this Kristen Devitt from the DOJ have to say about the issue of police in schools?
She was a very nice lady. I could tell that she was taking it personal because she had been an SRO. She was a social worker and she was an educator in schools. And her solution was like the best solution I've seen, honestly, and that being communities and school communities need to decide whether or not they want police in schools themselves. And she says students especially need to be a part of that conversation because they're the ones that are being affected. And at first I was upset with her trying to like, I feel like she was trying to give me the runaround, but you know, towards the end, I like started to see where she was coming from, and I had a level of respect for it because it's true. You know, there are people in power who send police in schools and don't know what they're doing to these kids. And that needs to be stopped. So I'm really glad Madison got rid of their contract with PD because it's not necessary. Like the level of discrimination it's insane.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same issue that they're dealing with now with the moratorium on suspensions. Because when you see a thing that is sort of by its very nature discriminatory, rather than try to fix it, just remove it. And that's what Madison has done. Like the police are disproportionately affecting Black and brown kids. So we're not going to fix that. So we're just going to remove it.
We're not, because it's a whole system that has to change. It's not just the system that we can control in our schools. We that's one thing, but we can't change the police system, right? We can't impact that. We can't change that. That's a whole other system that needs its own reckoning that Madison schools can't control. But what they can control is what happens inside their doors. And what they can say is like, out of school suspensions is impactful in a way that harms our children. And SROs are harmful based on the data that we have seen for our children as well. So let's remove them because we can't control or fix those other parts of it, right? Which is, I'm glad to see that they're doing it. And hopefully in any other district, as they are kind of recognizing what impacts these systems have that they can't control and they can't control, they make those decisions appropriately and with their students, right?
Well, the story is very well done, and it's really well sourced and researched, and it's on the website this morning, Madison365.org, with some good, lots of data, lots of visualizations and stuff. Angelica, anything else you want to add here that we didn't talk about?
I'm having a brain fart. Also, because of how big Milwaukee is, I assumed Wisconsin was blacker than it is, or browner, or more diverse. So seeing these numbers just hit me too. Like the Black, brown, Indigenous students with disabilities are already isolated and already othered. So like making them look like a threat in front of their classmates, their teachers seeing them as threats, also plays into like this vicious cycle of negatively affecting their educational journey. I just can't stop thinking about it. So I just wanted to share that because it's really important.
It is really important. And I do want to say that I appreciate your vulnerability in this conversation. You could have just stayed straight to the facts, but you brought, your own feelings and your experiences in this space. And it's really important. And it's reflection in that story that I hope people feel and hear, and listen to, because it's important information. And I am very proud of you, and I'm very proud of the work that you do for Madison365. And I hope you are proud of yourself. I know this is hard to see that as you're writing something this difficult, and understanding what it's like and remembering yourself as a child, and what that could have how that could have impacted you and made you feel, to put yourself in that space, even though you didn't have to, and no matter what amount of money Rob paid you. You didn't have to, and to bring that vulnerability to this space is something that I'm grateful for, and I want to acknowledge as well, but also that I'm just very proud that you're part of this team, and I hope you're proud of yourself too, and I hope you tell your mom, I'm proud of me, and look at my story. I know it's hard to read, but it's important, and I'm making a difference, and it's impactful, and I hope people, open up their eyes and listen and help to make some changes and understand the impact of those changes could be for those kids.
Period. And
Period.
I love you.
I love you too. Without nothing, you complete me. Rob, you're fine.
All right, Angelica, Stephanie, thank you for joining the show today. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
And thanks again to Angelica and Stephanie for joining the program today for that important reporting. The story's on the front page at Madison365.org right now. It's got some charts and some visualizations. You can see, it's got a got a table there. You can search by school district. You can sort by columns. You can click the thing to say, which districts had the highest disproportionate or the disparities for Black kids, for Indigenous kids, for Asian American kids, for Pacific Islander kids. You can search for your school district, see how well your school district does in terms of law enforcement referrals of children. That's all there. It's all there at Madison365.org. And that's all we have for you today. I appreciate you sticking with us. I know that was a long one, but it's an important topic. So appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.
This is 365 Media.